Story 1, submitted by Mara L. from McMinnville, Oregon. I never meant to be on that road after midnight. I grew up hearing the same thing everyone else in Yamhill County heard. Don't take Old Orchard Road after 12. The locals said it calmly, like they were telling you to wear a jacket because rain was coming. Not superstitious, not dramatic, just factual. People vanish, they'd say, shrugging, as if disappearances were an ordinary inconvenience, like running out of gas. I always thought it was rural folklore, a way to keep teenagers from drinking in the orchards or racing pickup trucks through the curves. But last October, around 12:20 a.m., I had no choice. I was driving back from a late shift at the winery. My usual route, Highway 18, was closed because a semi had jackknifed across both lanes. The deputy redirecting traffic was already exhausted and waving folks impatiently toward back roads. When I tried to ask if Old Orchard was on that detour, he said, "Ma'am, I don't know. Just follow the cones. Take it slow." So I did. The pavement thinned, trees tightened around the road, and the radio signal dissolved into static. I kept telling myself it was fine. It was just a road. Trees, asphalt, fences. Nothing supernatural about it. But something was wrong immediately. The temperature inside my car dropped. Not dramatically, not movie style. I just noticed I could see my breath faintly, like my lungs had turned into an old freezer. My heater was on, so I pushed my palm toward the vents. Warm air blew out. Still, I shivered. About 2 miles in, an old station wagon appeared in my rearview mirror. No headlights. I only saw its shape because of my brake lights when I slowed for a curve. The wagon was pale blue or gray, one of those long, ugly ones from the late 70s. Rust around the wheel wells, roof rack crooked. I might have ignored it, except it was right on my bumper. I pressed my hazard lights twice, my way of saying back off, and instead of slowing, the wagon edged closer. I couldn't see a driver. That was the first moment I felt something like fear. Not the sharp, sudden kind, but the slow, crawling kind that starts behind the ribs and moves upward like a tide. I sped up. It sped up. The road twisted between rows of old fruit trees, branches heavy and gnarled even in the dark. The moon kept vanishing behind clouds. When it was visible, its light flashed over the wagon's windshield, and each time, I expected to see a face watching me. Each time I saw nothing. I reached a straight stretch of road and floored it, my engine whining, tires slipping on wet leaves. The wagon stayed perfectly aligned with me, its headlights still off. No sound of its engine, no bounce on the uneven pavement. It just glided, smooth as a shadow. I tried calling 911. No service. I tried honking. No reaction. And then something strange happened. The trees on the right side thinned, revealing the silhouette of a house. I knew that house. Everyone did. A 2-story farmhouse collapsing inward on itself, abandoned since the early 90s. The story went that a family disappeared there. Parents, 2 kids, a visiting uncle. Sheriff wrote it off as them skipping town overnight, but locals swore the place was cursed. Vines had grown over the porch rail, windows dusted over by time. Except now, the porch light was on. A warm amber glow spilled across the dirt driveway, soft as a candle in a window. I slowed, couldn't help it. My brain said help, even if my gut said run. I rolled down my passenger window just a crack, listening for anything. Voices, movement, a generator. Anything that could explain why the house wasn't dark. Instead, I heard a sound from behind me. Not an engine, a voice, a man's. Close enough that it might have been inside the back seat, except I knew it wasn't. Pull over. 2 words, low, calm, almost polite. I froze. My hands locked on the steering wheel. I didn't look in the mirror. Couldn't. My body went rigid the way a deer does when it realizes the thing watching it isn't human. The voice returned, slightly firmer. Pull over. I didn't obey, couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Instead, I slammed the accelerator again, tearing down the road, gravel pinging against metal. The wagon didn't follow this time. The road behind me was empty when I finally dared to look. But the temperature kept falling. And I kept hearing faint echoes of those 2 words, sometimes right behind me, sometimes by my ear, sometimes outside the car, as if pacing me in the night. I drove until I hit a paved intersection I recognized, then took the fastest route home. I parked in my driveway, engine still running, too afraid to turn it off for a full minute. When I finally forced myself to get out, I noticed something on the back bumper. 5 long, pale smudges. Finger marks. Too wide for a child. Too spaced for a normal hand. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I drove to the sheriff's office. Not to file a report, I knew how that'd go, but to ask if anyone had been redirected down Old Orchard Road the night before. The deputy from the scene happened to be there. When he saw me, he looked confused. "I didn't send any cars down Old Orchard," he said. "That road wasn't part of the detour." I told him I'd followed the cones. "That detour ended before the county line," he said. "After that, you should have been back on Highway 18. He paused, then asked, "What road did you say you took?" I told him. He stared at me in a way that made the hairs on my arms rise. "People don't come out of Old Orchard after midnight," he said quietly. "Not in one piece, anyway. I haven't driven it since. I won't. But sometimes, usually around 12:20 a.m. I swear I still hear that man's voice in the back seat, just a tiny vibration at the edge of my hearing. Still calm, still polite, still waiting for me to pull over. Story 2. Submitted by Daniel R. from Clay County, West Virginia. I was 19 when I took the job with the county's road maintenance crew, which sounds more official than it was. Mostly I cleared brush along rural switchbacks and flagged traffic during repaving projects. But every now and then, they'd send me out alone to check a stretch of back road for storm damage, fallen trees, sinkholes, that sort of thing. One of those roads was Salt Lick Ridge Road, a narrow, winding cut through the hills that everybody in Clay County whispered about. Folks didn't talk loudly, just in passing, the way you mention a relative who drinks too much or a neighbor who lets junk pile up in their yard. Yeah, buddy vanished there. Truck found running, door wide open. Don't drive it after midnight. I figured it was country gossip. Every rural town has a road like that. Then came the night in June when the supervisor told me to do a quick check on Salt Lick Ridge. A bad storm had soaked the hills, and he wanted eyes on the road before morning logging trucks used it. "It's only 6 miles, he said, in and out. Take the county truck, leave the chainsaw, but grab the hazard lights." I glanced at the clock on the office wall. 11:47 p.m. "You want me up there this late?" I asked. He didn't look at me. "Just get it done." I should have refused, but 19-year-olds rarely say no to overtime. By the time I reached the start of Salt Lick Ridge, it was 12:18. Midnight had fully settled into the woods. Black, heavy, damp. Mist hung in the hollows like somebody dripping milk through the trees. The moment my tires hit the gravel, my radio fizzed out. Not surprising, reception disappears all over these hills. I wasn't nervous yet, just annoyed. For the first couple miles, nothing seemed off. A few branches down, some mud slippage from the bank. I took pictures like I was supposed to. Then I saw the truck. It sat halfway down an embankment, nose buried in ferns, passenger door open. White Chevy, older model. Headlights off. No one inside. I parked at the lip of the slope and scanned the woods with my flashlight. Rain dripped from the leaves in a slow, steady rhythm, the kind that makes it hard to hear anything else. "Hello?" I called. "Anyone hurt down there?" Silence. I slid down the embankment, boots sinking into saturated soil. The Chevy smelled faintly of gasoline and something else. Something metallic and wet, like old pennies left in a bucket of rainwater. The keys were still in the ignition. The radio was on, tuned to dead air. I reached for the glove box to check registration, but stopped. There were handprints on the passenger door, smeared upward, like someone had been dragged out rather than climbing in. Hard to tell if they were mud or blood in the beam of my flashlight, and I wasn't eager to find out. I stepped back and yelled again. My voice sounded too thin in the trees. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Not animal. Those are quick, chaotic, light. These were measured. Slow. crunching wet gravel somewhere behind me up on the road. I swung my flashlight upward. Nothing there. But the footsteps kept going, steady as a metronome, pacing along the road just above the embankment as if someone were walking laps. I couldn't see a silhouette, couldn't catch movement, only that sound circling, unhurried. I climbed back to the road, breathing hard. The county truck was 20 feet away, hazard lights pulsing. As I stood there, the footsteps stopped. Then something breathed behind me. A low, shallow inhale that brushed the back of my neck, close enough that I felt warm moisture, like someone leaning in to whisper. I whipped around, flashlight trembling. No one. The breath came again, this time by my right ear, softer but unmistakably human. I stumbled backward so fast I almost fell into the ditch. The woods around me had gone too quiet. Even the rain felt muffled. "Who's there?" I shouted, voice cracking. Silence. Then, farther down the road, my hazard lights flickered. Not dimmed. Flickered, like something had passed between them and me. I ran to the truck and yanked the door open, but someone had beaten me to it. Across the driver's seat, pressed into the wet fabric, was the clear outline of a person having sat there. Except the impression was fresh, soaking, as if the body had just risen seconds before I opened the door. And I had locked the truck. I know I had. I slammed the door shut and hit the lock button again, my heart thudding so violently I thought I might pass out. I climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine, floored the accelerator. The truck slid on wet gravel before catching traction and lunging forward. I didn't look in the mirrors. I didn't need to, because as I sped down Salt Lick Ridge, the radio, dead a moment earlier, crackled to life with a faint, distorted voice. "Don't leave yet." I turned it off. The radio turned itself back on. "Don't leave, Daniel." Hearing my own name nearly made me swerve into a ditch. I slapped the radio again. This time it stayed silent. For the remaining 4 miles, I drove faster than was safe, the mist swallowing my taillights. I didn't breathe until I hit pavement at the bottom of the ridge. Back at the county lot, I turned in my written report. I left out most of what happened. Not out of fear they wouldn't believe me, more because I needed to convince myself it hadn't been real. The supervisor barely skimmed it. "We'll tow the truck in the morning," he said. "You get some sleep." I was halfway out the door when he added casually, "What time do you get up there?" 12:18, I said. He nodded, eyes lowering to his desk. "That's when they go missing." He didn't explain. I didn't ask. I quit the job 3 days later. Even now, when I drive anywhere near Salt Lick Ridge, I keep my windows rolled up, doors locked, radio off. But sometimes, especially on foggy nights, I still hear that slow, steady crunch of footsteps pacing behind the tree line, keeping exact time with my heartbeat. And once I swear I heard the radio whisper my name again, faint as breath on my neck. Story 3. Submitted by Jessica P. from Mineral County, Montana. I used to think the scariest thing about rural Montana nights was the quiet, the way sound disappears into the pines, leaving only your heartbeat and the creak of settling timber. But after what happened on Midnight Canyon Road, I learned there's something far worse than quiet. There's the feeling that something is listening. This was back in 2019, when I'd just moved into my dad's old hunting cabin after he passed. Grief made me stupid that year. I drove long stretches at night just to feel movement, headlights carving tunnels through the dark. Midnight Canyon Road was the only direct route between my cabin and the small grocery store in St. Regis. Locals warned me about it all the time. "Don't use it after midnight," the cashier said once, bagging my milk. "Not unless you want company." She didn't smile when she said it. I laughed anyway. That was my mistake. One night in late November, I didn't leave town until almost 12:30. Snow had started falling, the heavy, wet kind that sticks instantly. I figured if I took it slow, I'd be fine. About a mile into Midnight Canyon, I felt the temperature drop inside my Subaru. I turned the heat up. Nothing changed. My breath fogged the windshield. Then the headlights flickered. Not off, just down, like someone was drawing a dimmer switch across the canyon. The snowflakes outside the glass slowed, drifting lazily as if someone had reached into time and stretched it out. I gripped the wheel so tightly my hands hurt. "Not tonight," I muttered. "Please, not tonight." The trees on either side thickened, their branches drooping under fresh snow. The road felt narrower than usual, as if the forest were pressing in. Then, through the swirl of flakes, I saw something ahead, a man standing in the middle of the road. He wasn't wearing a coat, no hat, just jeans and a button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up despite the cold. His skin looked wrong, grayish, like a photograph drained of color. He wasn't shivering. He wasn't moving. I slammed the brakes and skidded to a stop 10 yards from him. My heart hammered against my ribs. I fumbled for my phone. No service. Of course. "Sir?" I yelled through the cracked window. "Are you hurt?" No answer. He turned his head slightly, just enough that I saw his face. His eyes were open too wide, not terrified, not surprised. Just wide, like he'd forgotten how to blink. And his mouth hung open the same way, as if he were in the middle of saying something he'd never finished. I rolled the window up fully and hit the door lock. "Sir, I'm going to call for help," I lied, lifting my phone again. He took one slow step toward the car, then another. I shifted into reverse, but the wheels spun uselessly in the wet snow. The car lurched sideways instead of backward. The man kept advancing, and then he spoke, except his lips didn't move. His jaw stayed slack, mouth open like a machine with a piece missing. The voice I heard came from the trees, from all around me. "Do you hear it too?" I froze, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Another step. The man's eyes didn't blink. "Do you hear it too?" the voice repeated, closer now, echoing through the branches overhead. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't want to know. Snow piled against the windshield, melting in slow streaks. My headlights flickered again, this time almost going out. When they rose back to full brightness, the man was gone. Completely gone. No footprints in the snow, no sound, just empty road. I shoved the Subaru into drive and floored it, fishtailing until the tires caught and shot me down the canyon. I didn't look in the mirror. I didn't breathe. All I could think was, "Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop." Halfway home, my dashboard lights dimmed and the radio crackled on. I hadn't touched it. A new voice spoke, low, rhythmic, almost humming. "Slow down. It can't follow if you slow down." I nearly ran off the road gripping the wheel, forcing myself to ignore it. "Slow down, Jessica." Hearing my name broke something inside me. My throat tightened. Tears blurred my vision. But I didn't slow down. I pushed the car harder, harder, as if speed alone could break whatever was chasing me. When I finally reached the cabin, I threw the door open and ran inside, boots slipping on the porch. I locked every window, every latch, shoved a chair under the doorknob. I didn't care how ridiculous I looked. The cabin felt too warm, too alive, like the air itself was holding its breath. I made it to my bedroom and sat on the floor, back against the closet door, waiting for silence. But silence didn't come. At 12:57 a.m., my phone, still with no service, lit up. A notification banner slid across the screen from an unknown number. "Do you hear it too?" The phone turned off by itself. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I didn't sleep much for weeks. I still live in that cabin. Mortgage is paid, nowhere else to go. But I haven't used Midnight Canyon Road since. I'll take the long route along the river, even if it adds an hour. Sometimes when snow starts falling the same way it did that night, I swear I can still hear footsteps crunching outside the cabin. Slow, deliberate, matching my breath, matching my heartbeat. And sometimes, usually around 12:57, I think I can hear a faint whisper rising from the tree line. Do you hear it too? I pray I never find out what it is. Story 4, submitted by Travis H. from Red Lake County, Minnesota. I've lived in northern Minnesota my whole life, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the cold out here does strange things. It bends sound, thickens shadows, Makes you think you're seeing people on the road when it's really just fog rolling off a ditch. That's what I told myself the night I drove County Road 22 after midnight. The road folks around here call the empty stretch. People say travelers disappear on it. Not die, not crash, vanish. Trucks found idling on the shoulder, headlights still on, driver's seat warm. No footprints in the snow. We joke about it at the bar, like Minnesotans do, but nobody drives that road unless they have to. The only reason I did was because my younger brother hadn't shown up for his early shift at the grain elevator. His girlfriend called me, worried. Said he'd left her place around 11:30. Should have been home 20 minutes later. He never arrived. I knew he sometimes cut across County 22 to shave off time. I also knew what people said about that road. Still, I went. It was 12:43 a.m. when I turned onto the empty stretch. Temperature outside read 14 degrees, cold enough to sting through the truck's closed windows. The sky was clear, moon hanging low and pale, lighting the snowbanks like someone had dumped crushed glass all over them. For the first mile, the road looked normal. Just endless fields, bare trees, nothing moving but drifting powder. Then I noticed something ahead on the right shoulder. A car. Silver sedan, engine running. Exhaust spilling into the night like breath from a sleeping animal. I pulled up behind it, hazard lights blinking red against the snow. When I stepped out, the cold hit so hard it felt like needles pushing into my jaw. "Evan?" I called. My voice sounded too small. I walked to the driver's side window. The glass was half frosted, but I wiped it clear with my glove. The seat was empty, but the dome light was on, keys in the ignition, radio humming low with static. On the passenger seat sat Evan's phone and wallet. I tried the door, unlocked. Inside, the air was warm, freshly warm, as if he'd stepped out seconds before I got there. I spun around, scanning the fields. "Evan!" I shouted, louder this time. Nothing but the whisper of wind skating across snow. I grabbed the big maglite from my truck and walked out into the field, boots crunching through the crusted top layer. My breath drifted like smoke under the moon. About 20 feet out, I found footprints. They led away from the road in a straight, determined line. I lifted my flashlight. The prints continued for maybe 30 feet, then stopped. Just stopped. No circle back, no drag marks, no disturbance. One step, then nothing but untouched snow stretching to the tree line. I crouched, heart pounding. The last footprint was deeper than the others. As if my brother had paused, shifted his weight, and then, what? Jumped? Dropped? Been lifted? A breeze rolled over the field, but it wasn't the temperature that made me shiver. It was a sound riding on it, soft, uneven, like someone trying to speak through chattering teeth. I raised the flashlight and scanned the trees. A figure stood among them, tall, thin, facing me, not moving. "Evan?" I tried, though everything in me said it wasn't him. The figure stepped forward. The snow didn't crunch. It didn't make any sound at all. I took a step back. The figure took another step forward, closer now, close enough that the moonlight touched its clothes. They didn't look right. Thin shirt, no coat, pants stiff with frost, arms hanging too loosely at its sides. I aimed the flashlight at its face. The beam flickered, died, pitch dark. I slapped the flashlight, shaking it. When it came back on, the figure was gone. I spun around wildly, breath tearing in and out of my chest. That's when I heard it, directly behind me. My brother's voice, except wrong. Slowed down, flattened, like a recording played underwater. "Travis." I turned. Nobody there. Just wide, open snow. Then, from the direction of the road, "Travis!" I ran. God, I ran so hard my legs went numb. When I reached the sedan, the driver's door was open. I hadn't left it open. Inside, the radio had changed from static to a faint, rhythmic whispering. Not words, just breath. Slow, wet, measured. I slammed the door and sprinted to my truck. The locks clicked the moment I shut myself inside. I don't remember starting the engine. I only remember flying down the road, tires skidding on the ice. Every few seconds, the radio in my truck made tiny popping sounds like someone touching the microphone. Then a voice slid through, barely formed. "Come back." I slapped the radio off. It turned itself back on. "Bring him back." I nearly screamed. I punched the radio so hard the panel cracked, and this time it stayed dead. When I reached town, I called the sheriff. They searched the fields for 2 days. Dogs, drones, volunteers, nothing. Not one sign of my brother except the sedan, still idling. The investigation's still open. Official story says he wandered off in the cold, disoriented, and the snow buried the evidence. I don't believe that. Not when, on the last night of the search, I drove past County 22 again and saw footprints on the shoulder. One set, bare feet. Each print filled with melting water, as if made moments earlier, and leading, not away from the road this time, but onto it, toward my truck as I passed. I locked my doors and kept driving. Now, some nights, usually around 12:43, my phone buzzes with a call from an unknown number. I never answer, but I put it on speaker once, just once. A man's voice breathed into my ear. "Travis, come back." I haven't slept right since.